Level 1, the Ditch Digger. You start with a shovel that is not really yours. It belongs to an army that does not know your name. You dig because the ground is softer than the enemy wall, and because your back is cheaper than iron. The trench is your world. Mud crawls up your calves. Cold water sits in your boots until your skin forgets what dry feels like. You learn the first law of siege engineering. Earth is a weapon. You pile it into a low berm. You carve a shallow ditch that turns arrows aside and gives men somewhere to crouch. You drag wicker baskets of soil until your fingers split. Your food tastes like smoke and old fat. Your water tastes like the barrel. At night, you hear the city behind its stone. You hear laughter, then silence. You hear the defenders cough. You hear your own side praying. Then you hear the real sound. A stone shot thumps into the dirt nearby. A scream follows. No one looks up. Looking up is how you die. You are not building glory. You are building a slow cage. Level 2, the Timber Hauler. Now they trust you with wood, not as a reward, as a burden. You haul logs, planks, and bundles of brush to the forward line. Your shoulders bruise purple under the load. Sap sticks to your hands. Splinters fester. The engineers talk about mantlets, sheds, and covered ways. You only see weight and sweat. They need screens to block arrows and bolts. They need fastens, tight bundles of sticks to fill ditches and level ground. They need gabions, baskets packed with earth, to eat cannonballs and stay standing. You learn how siege work feeds on forests. A siege does not just surround a city. It strips the land. Trees vanish. Fences vanish. Houses outside the walls vanish. Everything becomes fuel, scaffold, platform, ladder. You start to understand the cruelty of measurement. A wall is not admired, it is assessed. Height, thickness, angle. The distance to the ditch, the slope of the ground. Every number becomes a way to hurt someone you cannot see yet. Your hands smell of resin and smoke. Your dreams smell the same. Level 3, the Torsion Maker. They move you closer to the machines. Here the air is different. It tastes of grease, hemp, and fear. You twist rope until your wrists ache, and you watch the frame of a ballista rise like a skeleton. The veterans call it artillery. They speak of torsion, of twisted skeins that store violence like a coiled animal. You learn that a siege is not only pounding, it is precision. A stone needs to be round enough to fly true. A bolt needs to be straight enough to find a man on a wall. When the winch turns, the whole crew holds its breath. When the release snaps, the sound is a whip crack, followed by a distant, wet impact. The officers talk about the Romans, about siege towers, rams under protective shelters, and engines that could make defenders flinch behind parapets. You do not care about their history. You care about the moment the shot lands and the wall does not fall. Then the engine crew reloads. Again, again, again. That is the truth of your new level. A machine does not get tired. You do. Level 4, the Sapper in the dark. Now you go under the ground. The trench is no longer enough. Walls are stubborn. Stone laughs at your stones. So you become a sapper, a miner with a soldier's pay and a grave digger's fate. You crawl into a tunnel that smells of damp clay and human breath. The roof is held up by timber props that creak like weak teeth. Your lamp makes the darkness feel thicker. You swing a pick in a space too tight to draw a full breath. Dirt falls into your eyes. Sweat runs down your spine and turns cold. You listen for the enemy, not their voices. They're digging. A faint scrape, a distant knock. Countermining. If they break into your gallery, it becomes a knife fight in a coffin. If they set a camouflet, a buried blast, the roof folds down and seals you in with your own panic. When you reach the wall's foundation, you build the chamber. You pack it. You prepare fire or powder. You back out, inch by inch, praying the supports hold until the moment they are meant to fail. You do not see the collapse. You feel it. The ground shivers, then screams rise through the soil like steam. Level 5, the Trebuchet Master. They pull you back into daylight, not to rest, to build something taller than hope. The Trebuchet, a gravity beast. It does not care about twisted ropes or strained arms. It uses mass. It uses inevitability. You work with carpenters and blacksmiths. You fit joints. You hammer iron straps. You grease axles. The sling hangs like a noose. The counterweight box is filled with rock, scrap, and anything heavy enough to make a city regret its confidence. You learn the ritual of calibration, the length of the arm, the weight, the angle, the release pin. Small changes decide whether the stone kisses the parapet or smashes through a roof and into a crowded street. The crew talks in short commands. They do not talk about the bodies. When the engine fires, the air tears. The projectile arcs high, almost graceful. Then it drops. A heartbeat, later comes the sound. Not a crack, but a deep, ugly thunder, followed by dust rising behind the wall. Defenders stop walking openly. They start living underground, the way you did. You smile once, then feel sick. You are not winning a war. You are teaching a city how to fear the sky. Level 6. The Bombard Builder. Wood and rope were just the beginning. Now you meet the age of fire. The foundry is hell with rules. Bronze glows like liquid sun. Men sweat until they look carved from salt. You learn that casting a siege cannon is not just craft. It is logistics, metallurgy, and arrogance welded together. The gun is massive. It demands roads rebuilt, bridges reinforced, oxen bleeding in harness. It demands powder that must stay dry and stone shot that must be shaped and hauled. The gun becomes a moving fortress, guarded as if it were a king. You hear stories of great bombards and master founders, of guns that could throw stone balls big enough to crush towers, of sieges, where the walls finally surrendered to repeated impacts and the shaking of their own foundations. You also hear what the stories leave out. Guns crack, barrels burst, crews die to their own weapon. When you fire, there is a moment of silence inside your chest, like your heart forgot its job. Then the blast hits you. Smoke fills your mouth. The recoil shoves the platform. A few seconds later, the wall chips, then fractures, then opens. You watch the breach appear. You should feel proud. Instead, you feel the weight of what comes through it. Level 7, the Trench Engineer. You are no longer just muscle. You are method. The siege becomes a geometry problem written in blood. You learn the language of approach. Covered trenches, saps, zigzags, parallels dug across the front like slow tightening bands. You work at night. You work in silence. The goal is to move men closer without giving the defenders a clean shot. You lay out the first line, beyond effective fire, then push forward by angles that deny direct sight. You widen sections into batteries. You build platforms so guns do not sink into mud. This is the era where military engineers become celebrities in uniform. They talk about systems, about predictable progress, about taking a fortress without wasting an army on one suicidal rush. You see what the system really means. It means every foot of ground is purchased with labor and corpses. When a sortie bursts out of the gate, it is your trench line they try to rip open. You fight with shovel and bayonet. You patch the damage at dawn, hands shaking, eyes hollow. You have become the knife edge that moves slowly, always forward, always closer, until the wall is close enough to touch. Level 8, the Bastion Architect. Now they ask you to design what you once attacked. The old high walls are dead. Cannon made them dead. So you build low and thick. You shape earth and stone into angles that do not offer a clean target. You build bastions that let defenders fire along the face of their own walls. You plan ditches, glacis slopes, and kill zones that turn attackers into targets from multiple directions. You learn that defense is also engineering cruelty. You use water as a weapon. You cut channels. You flood approaches. You turn fields into sucking marsh so guns cannot be dragged close. You add outworks that force an attacker to take your fortress in layers, each one costing time, powder, and lives. But the higher you climb, the quieter it gets. You do not swing a pick now. You hold a map. Lines on paper become graves in advance. If you draw an angle wrong, men die. If you draw it right, men still die, just on the other side. You start to feel the loneliness of expertise. Kings want miracles. Generals want certainty. You can give neither. You can only offer probability and a bill for materials. A fortress is a promise. You know how often promises fail. Level 9. The Industrial Siege Engineer. Steel replaces bronze. Rail replaces oxen. Shells replace stone. The siege grows teeth that never stop growing. You stand in a world where factories feed the front, and the front eats everything. You watch rifled guns bite farther and with more accuracy. Earthworks deepen, trenches stretch for miles. You build revetments, bomb-proof shelters, and communication trenches. You sight batteries like an accountant of death, choosing angles and ground that will survive counterfire. You learn from sieges that feel like the future. Long months of digging, bombardment, repair, and more digging. The work becomes a grind. Not heroic, not dramatic, just relentless. A fortress is no longer a single wall. It is a network of positions, each one connected by mud and fear. Labor is still the hidden engine. Men who are barely soldiers dig until their hands fail. Some are forced, some are paid. All are spent. Disease joins the enemy. Rats become part of the supply chain. You start to understand that modern siege engineering is not about one breach. It is about exhaustion. You do not break stone. You break time, morale, and the human ability to endure noise. Level 10. The Tunneler and the Ghost. At the highest level, you return to the dark again. Not with a pick and a lamp, but with maps, pumps, electricity, and explosives measured like chemistry. You lead tunneling teams beneath a front line that never sleeps. You dig deep into clay, silent as possible, because the enemy listens with microphones pressed to the earth. You fight a hidden war. Gallery against gallery, camouflage against camouflage, collapse against collapse. Men vanish in cave-ins. Men suffocate in bad air. Men go mad from the pressure of silence and the certainty of being buried alive. Then comes the moment. The charges are packed. The wires are tested. The plan is written in minutes and seconds. When the mines fire, the ground opens like a mouth. The landscape changes shape. The trench line disappears into dust and flying soil. You stand above it, and you feel nothing at first. Because at your level, feeling is a liability. You have trained yourself into a kind of clean emptiness. Later, when the guns quiet, the emptiness turns on you. You realize you have become the siege engine, not the builder, not the operator, the engine itself, a mind that converts earth into a weapon. And there is no higher promotion than that, only a deeper grave.